Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm joined now by Julie F. Kay, who is a human rights attorney and activist and a co-author with Catherine Colbert of a book that has been updated in 2024. The title is Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. Joining me is Julie Kay. Julie, I hope 2025 is going better for you than it is for many of us. Lady B, I don't hear Julie. Oh, there you are, Julie. Thanks.
Hi. I just said it's delightful to be here in company with you either way. So, yes, well, it has not been off to a great start for our rights.
No. For much of 2024, every Thursday, I used to do a segment that I called The War on Women, which was to make sure that there was a focus on what was going on nationally and in various state legislatures. And I was hoping very much that that would be a segment that was no longer needed after the election, but I'm not so sure about that. Well, what do you see as our outlook on this issue?
Yeah, I think you're never going to be able to give up that segment because, we have a history in this country and worldwide of trying to enforce gender roles and gender stereotypes and as a way to control women and to control men in some ways of these very traditional norms of caregiver, breadwinner, those kinds of things. And society is constantly evolving and becoming more equitable and pushing back against those. And I think what you see is not necessarily a pendulum swing as much as just a real effort to kind of bring us backwards because of the gains that have been made. And it's, in some ways it's very effective when those who have political power really enforce traditional gender stereotypes and put controls on women's bodies and on the rights of LGBTQ folks and others. But as we've seen, popular opinion in this country overwhelmingly favors abortion rights and favors rights to get the government out of private decision making. And we see the way people are living their lives in some very, sort of modern ways in some ways, but also really just doing what works best for them and their families, regardless of what the sort of political rhetoric is.
Yeah. I saw a young woman whose name escapes me. She's not a particularly famous in political circles, but she said that this was, I think, on TikTok, and she said that if you want to know why the Republicans are so obsessed with gender, it's because they need a clear-cut hierarchy. They need men to be men and women to be women so that they can elevate men over women and enforce this hierarchy. But if gender is all this mishmash and, men are becoming women and women are becoming men, or there's all this cloud, that it's more difficult to set up an enforceable hierarchy of power. And I thought that was a really interesting take, particularly coming from what was, I don't know, everybody really looks young to me, but my guess is that she was in her early 20s, speculating that basically this whole brouhaha over gender, aside from the fact that it distracts people from more important issues, it was a way of, bottom line, controlling women. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think this kind of breaking of the binary, which is so restrictive, I think back to in my mother's day when they were told they had to wear skirts and heels if they went into town and they had a certain curfew and those kinds of things. And now where I live in Brooklyn, I don't think anyone bats an eye at, somebody who's clearly male wearing nail polish. And even in my mother's day, wearing jeans was pretty radical. And so I think that, younger generations do start turning over these traditions and embracing things that fit them better. You don't have to be closeted for being gay the way you had to a generation ago. I don't even know that sort of coming out is a thing the way it was in the 80s and 90s. People don't have coming out parties. They just kind of identify and talk to their families and friends and are who they are. And I think that's some sign of progress, and I think that is what's bringing forward a lot of this ugliness and hatred and really just vilifying people who are trans or non-binary or LGBTQI. It's really trying to reinforce an idea of places in society and hierarchy that's going away. I would agree with the young TikToker, and it's wonderful that that those platforms are out there for people to speak directly and to create their own content. There's certainly some real downsides to the social media platforms of the world, but it's nice to hear that there are some ways of reaching people with new ideas and voicing opinions that people want to share.
I agree with that, and I have also been keeping an eye on things that are coming out of the various states. And what really, I was talking to Ed Yanka of the American Civil Liberties Union earlier in the week. There are state legislatures where proposals are being written up that would make getting an abortion a homicide. And as Ed from the ACLU is explaining, it's this whole effort to create fetal personhood, because that would literally change the playing field. If the minute two cells come together, you've got a person, then all the laws are changed. I'm not sure that those bills will ever become law. I fear, because there are things that I thought before that were too radical to become law that surprisingly became law. When you read about these bills that would basically make getting an abortion a murder, what do you think about that?
Yeah, for a long time, the big dream and goal of the anti-abortion movement has been fetal personhood, or what's called a human life amendment. And I lived and worked in Ireland when they had achieved that goal. They had a constitutional provision which equated the life of the unborn with the life of the mother, and it banned all abortion. The text of it even banned abortion in cases to save the woman's life. It was considered, you do what you can to save both patients, so to speak, and that's something we've seen in the cases that Texas and Idaho have brought to the Supreme Court last term, trying to deny life-saving abortions for women in the emergency rooms. And it's frightening because it not only ends up in an even greater rate of maternal mortality, which the United States has a really disproportionately high rate of maternal mortality compared to other industrialized countries, and particularly for women of color and black women are really have horrifying rates of maternal mortality that are about between 4 and 8 times the rates of white women. So you're playing Russian roulette with women's health when you establish that a fetus has the same rights to health care. It also opens the door for controlling women's behavior during pregnancy. If you're smoking a cigarette or skiing or, doing any range of behaviors, it allows for criminalization of behavior during pregnancy. And I think one of the other things that we see in that change is right now it is not a crime anywhere in the United States for a woman or a pregnant person to take medication abortion, to self-manage her care and have an abortion. It's a crime to hand her those medications. In many places, it may be criminal activity to even help her or give her a ride or get her a cup of tea or lend her money. We're seeing an expansion of those laws very rapidly after Dobbs, but what the anti-abortion people and what the Republican Party has not done is try to criminalize women's behavior so far. That is
so far. I like that little addendum.
Politically.
So far,
yes.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's a question of who is controlling the agenda for the anti-abortion movement. it's very hard to get a read on what President Trump feels about anything, but about this issue as well. But there are certainly those around him who I always say they think about abortion as much as I do, and that's not a healthy thing. But, we saw today that he signed pardons for 23 anti-abortion protesters. These are people who, committed crimes of invading property, stolen property, harassing clinics, and generally threatening, and were criminally prosecuted. And so he's signaling to people that this is okay to move forward. And despite what we saw in the last election, an incredible support for abortion rights in this country, we still aren't reaching the politicians who just want to keep coming after the right to reproductive health care, including contraception, IVF, and, of course, abortion.
Yeah. In your book, Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom, I wanted to focus on Chapter 14, Moving Forward, a Broader Agenda for Reproductive Freedom. And you suggest some things that need to be focused on, need to be advanced. And this is so reasonable. I mean, this is not a radical agenda. This is not, she's really crossing a line. This is stuff that once upon a time we would have called common sense. And yet you wrote about it, and it was necessary to write about things like health care for all. What an interesting idea. Save lives, reduce maternal and infant deaths. Oh, my gosh, what a great idea, Julie. Where did you think of that?
Well, I think, when you look at reproductive freedom, it needs to be beyond abortion. We live in a country with real racial disparities in access to health care and access to resources. And the decision about whether, when, and with whom to have a child or not is a human right. And for many people, the decision is made of what works best for them, what's the time, who's their partner. But for many people, it also is, do I have housing security? Do I have food security? Can I have another child? 50% of the women who are having abortions already have one child. So will that child get an education? Will that child get breakfast? Those kinds of basic questions. So we really do need to keep a broad focus on reproductive freedom. But in the book, we really looked at what's happening now, what are the real pain points for people, and what can we do feasibly? And it is everything from, the real basics of restoring healthcare access and funding to amending the Constitution. We have not ever had a provision in the Constitution that really recognizes gender equity. But I think in this moment in time and where we are politically, my real focus has been on telemedicine abortion. My organization that I co-founded recently with two doctors is called the Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine. And what we do is we are the only national organization that is supporting doctors and other licensed healthcare practitioners who are sending safe and affordable medication abortion to women in all 50 states. So because New York and California and Massachusetts, a total of 8 states have passed what are known as shield laws, meaning that doctors who are in their state and are using telemedicine to provide FDA-certified medications to women, no matter where the patient is located, those doctors are shielded from any kind of retaliation by anti-abortion state officials in, name your state of the 26 that are either banning or restricting or where abortion is otherwise under-resourced. And so we're really working both to get resources to women who don't have the ability to travel or don't want to travel because they have children they're taking care of or a job or school, or they don't want to travel 200 miles to go pick up the same pills at a clinic in another state. For whatever reason, they want this, you do a consult online with a doctor, and within 3 to 5 days for $150, you can get the same medications you would pick up at a clinic.
Julia,
and that's been.
We need to take a break, and I want to talk more about the Abortion Coalition of Telemedicine and exactly where it works, who's a part of it, and how people can access it. But we need to take a real quick commercial break. I'm talking to Julie F.K. along with Catherine Colbert. She wrote Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. There was an updated 2024 edition. She is also, as she just mentioned, doing work with an organization called Abortion Coalition of Telemedicine, telemedicine is going to be so important in the coming years that I think we need to do a deep dive into it. After this break, that's what we'll do.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Julie Kay, who's a human rights attorney, an activist, and a co-author with Catherine Colbert of Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. She's also involved with an organization that we were just talking about called Abortion Coalition of Telemedicine. Telemedicine, in other words, getting abortion drugs so that you can control your own reproductive life is going to be really, really important. Already, more than half of abortions are done with medicine. Planned Parenthood has said that if the most popular drug for this somehow ends up getting banned, they have a backup drug that they will potentially be able to provide to people. And this gets at the heart of it. This gets at the heart of power over women, control over women. So, again, I want you to recap again, Julie, the Abortion Coalition of Telemedicine. Who is it? What is it? What does it do?
Well, ACT was formed in response to DOB and exactly to do what you're talking about, that medication abortion, doing an abortion by taking a series of pills, is the most popular method that women were choosing, even when Roe was still the law of the land. And as we've all gotten more used to telemedicine, to virtual visits with our providers, to getting things shipped to the internet, medication abortion became available through telemedicine. There are providers who do a consult with you online, and then they do a screening, and then within 3 to 5 days you receive the medications at home. And the abortion usually takes about 48 hours, and the medication abortion is kind of described as a heavy period or a bad flu. It's not nothing, but most women prefer to be at home and surrounded, with their own stuff and people. And so it's become enormously popular. 1/5 of all abortions in the country right now are done by telemedicine. And that includes about 10,000 or more women each month who are in the southern parts of the United States where abortion may be otherwise banned or restricted or just inaccessible. And these doctors who do telemedicine charge between $150 to $200. If a woman can't afford to pay for the abortion, there's a sliding fee scale all the way down to $0. So this new option has become very popular very quickly, and we're watching it grow. And the providers who ACT, the Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine, works to support are those who are really focusing on opening and preserving telemedicine, these virtual clinics. So we do everything from technical assistance, we offer medical malpractice insurance, and we offer them also legal representation because, like with all things abortion, when something becomes effective and safe and desired, the anti-abortion movement takes notice and starts targeting it even more. We've seen increasing attacks on access to the medications themselves, as well as now on telemedicine providers.
Well, yeah, and this medicine has been around for a very long time. But one of the arguments that opponents make is, it wasn't tested. It wasn't tested well. We don't know for sure if it's safe. We better withdraw any support for this because, it needs to go through much more rigorous testing. I mean, do they expect people to believe that? I mean, does anybody believe that?
Well, it's patently false. I mean, the main medication in medication abortion, mifepristone, was once called RU46, or the French abortion pill, back in the 90s, and it came into this country as well. It's been used globally successfully for decades now, and the science is there and it's real. But we've seen tactics to scare women, calling it chemical abortion, saying it causes hemorrhaging, all these kinds of things. And the reality is that it is one of the safest, if not the safest, methods of abortion. And the thing about abortion also is that pregnancy isn't very safe. For those who've gone through pregnancy, they know it's a full body experience and things. And we don't try to scare women away from pregnancy because of the health risks and the high blood pressure and all those kinds of things. But as soon as there's a safe and easy to use method of abortion, which means that you don't have to go to a clinic and be harassed and face protesters, those kinds of things. It's affordable, and it's something that women are going to use either way. And one of the things that we do at ACT is we really work to make sure that it's a doctor or other advanced care practitioner who is sending you your pills, who's doing the proper medical screening, who's there to answer questions, through telemedicine or through a phone hotline in case a woman has questions or concerns. We don't want people just, going anywhere to get their pills, because it's the World Wide Web can be a good place, and it's also, there's a lot of risks there. So we're really work to support these healthcare professionals to make sure that the patient has a really positive experience.
I'm curious, how do you get the word out about your group, and how do you contact the people who could use your services?
Well, we are actually not a provider ourselves of healthcare. We support the providers who do, and there are several different groups within the United States. Some telemedicine providers who only serve within their state, others that go to all 50 states, and some who are regional. So there are many different practices, and there are websites that are set up simply to direct women to the providers themselves. Plan C is a very popular one. I need an A, as in I need an abortion. And so they are the ones who get the word out. We work directly with the medical professionals. We're kind of the professional medical organization for the abortion providers, as well as offering them medical malpractice insurance and legal representation. And we do a lot of policy work and some lobbying to try to get the laws to be more conducive towards supporting telemedicine as an option for those who want it.
Here in the state of Illinois, Planned Parenthood this week announced that there were 4 clinics that they were closing, and they cited a number of reasons, but rising insurance costs was one of them. Is this a problem for a lot of people?
Rising insurance costs are a problem all throughout healthcare, and certainly for medical providers. And what we found when we looked at what was an impediment to people opening a telemedicine providing a clinic, a virtual clinic, was that they didn't have malpractice insurance. So we started a malpractice group. We offer very low-cost malpractice insurance to our membership. And with that, they're protected for doing telemedicine across state lines. Illinois does not have a shield law for its providers of telemedicine, which means that if you are wanting to become a telemedicine provider using your Illinois license, the state won't provide the kinds of protections against criminal extradition or civil lawsuits or license censorship. We would love for Illinois to join the other 8 states that provide these protections, because Illinois has been providing a lot of services for women who are traveling from areas as far away as the Mississippi Delta and other states where there are they barely have access to contraception but have a full ban on abortion. So for Illinois to join in the shield law states, I think would really help to offset some of the loss of clinics closing, because you could send the medications to people instead of having them travel, and you can serve a pretty big number of women fairly easily through telemedicine without anybody having to travel.
Well, I am now going to make a note of that. And when I talk to Illinois state legislators on this radio show, I'm going to ask them, is anybody working on that? Who's co-sponsoring that? When is it going to come up for a vote? Thank you.
I would love that, Joan, and if they need model legislation or any help with it, that is a lot of what ACT does. Is we just need more of these laws. We need more providers, and we need the states to stand together to recognize the human rights that are at issue in this country.
Well, if they request that, frankly, I will tell them regardless of whether or not they request it, that it's available there. Julie, thank you so much for joining us. Julie Kay, co-author of Controlling Women, What We Must Do Now to Save Reproductive Freedom. She wrote it with Catherine Colbert. She's also part of an organization called Abortion Coalition of Telemedicine. Thank you, Julie, for being here. It's a real pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, Joan.